What really happens after we die? Many people believe in an afterlife, a soul, or some form of consciousness that continues beyond the grave. But the evidence from neuroscience tells a much simpler story and points to a conclusion most people find uncomfortable. When the brain dies, consciousness ends. Neuroscience strongly indicates that all of our experiences and mental functions arise from the brain. Perception, movement, learning, memory, speech and language, emotion, moral and aesthetic sense, our thinking, cognition, imagination, our ability to plan and reason, our capacity to make decisions, our sense of self, our personality and identity, our conscious awareness itself. All of these are products of the brain and depend on the brain to exist. In fact, the dependence of the mind on the brain was recognized long ago by Hippocrates, the so-called father of modern medicine, who wrote around the year 400 BC, "Men ought to know that from nothing else but the brain come joys, delights, laughter and sports, and sorrows, griefs, despondency, and lamentations. And by this, in an especial manner, we acquire wisdom and knowledge, and see and hear, and know what are foul and what are fair, what are bad and what are good, what are sweet and what unsavory. Some we discriminate by habit, and some we perceive by their utility. By this we distinguish objects of relish and disrelish according to the seasons. And the same things do not always please us. And by the same organ we become mad and delirious, and fears and terrors assail us, some by night and some by day, and dreams and untimely wanderings, and cares that are not suitable, and ignorance of present circumstances, desuetude and unskillfulness. All these things we endure from the brain when it is not healthy." We know that different parts of the brain have different functions related to our mental life, and that these functions can be selectively disrupted or obliterated when these structures are damaged or destroyed through stroke, injury, disorders of brain development, or disease. Memory can vanish, consciousness can be lost, personality can change, identity itself can dissolve. This shows us that the mind isn't separate from the brain, it depends on it. The next few slides list several neurological conditions and mental deficits that can result from damage to parts of the brain, including loss of conscious awareness. Here's a list of several conditions involving alterations or injury to the brain, which result in reduced, temporary, or complete loss of conscious awareness. In short, broken brains lead to broken minds. Given that the mind and our consciousness depend on the brain, we can demonstrate that there is no survival of conscious experience after death, and therefore no afterlife. Here's the argument step by step. 1. Consciousness depends on the functioning of the brain, as demonstrated by how brain damage alters or destroys mental capacities, including consciousness. 2. When the brain ceases functioning at death, the processes that generate consciousness irreversibly stop. Conclusion 1. Therefore, consciousness does not persist after death. Conclusion 2. If there is no consciousness after death of the brain, there is no afterlife. Here are some common objections to this argument. Some argue for a soul separate from the body and the brain. But if that were true, brain damage wouldn't alter or erase memory, personality, or conscious awareness. Yet it does. Others point to near-death experiences. A near-death experience is a profound, vivid encounter during a life-threatening situation, often involving sensations such as leaving the body, seeing a tunnel or a light, feelings of peace, and sometimes a life review, or meeting a deceased loved one or a revered religious figure. But these dreamlike experiences are well explained by the brain under stress. Lack of oxygen, hallucinations, and residual brain activity. It's important to note that brain activity is altered during a near-death experience, but not completely abolished. The brain during a near-death experience is not dead. Finally, some say that we don't yet fully understand how the brain works and how it gives rise to consciousness. This is true, but ignorance isn't evidence that consciousness survives death. Indeed, all the evidence we do have indicates that consciousness depends on brain function. In short, if the mind could exist without the brain damage shouldn't destroy it, but it does. And near-death visions don't prove life after death. They prove what experiences a stressed brain can create. So, the most straightforward, evidence-based conclusion is this: when the brain dies, consciousness is extinguished, and there is no afterlife. What are the implications for religion? The afterlife is a myth. Religions or philosophical worldviews that assert the survival of an individual's consciousness after death are disconfirmed or refuted by the scientific evidence from neurobiology. They are either false or need to be revised to eliminate the notion of post-mortem survival and an afterlife. When you're dead, you're really dead. Forever. This conclusion may not be comforting, but it's what neuroscience points to. And facing that truth gives us one clear meaning. The life we have now is the only one we can be sure of, so we should make the most of it. If you found this video helpful or thought-provoking, hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Thanks for watching.